What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the H Panel, the show where I bring on guests from all different backgrounds to talk all the things mental health. I'm your host, Harry Potvin, and today I have a guest by the name of Sherianna Boyle. Sherianna is an international emotional detox coach who has published 8 books and has been featured in over 90 articles from across the world for her work. She aims to use her practices to help listeners and clients learn to accept their emotions and get the world feeling again. Sherianna was so much fun to talk to, and I really want to thank her for coming on and having this discussion with me. Also, a big shout out to everyone who's been sending me messages on Instagram about inspirational quotes to open the show up with. I really appreciate all the contribution. So the first one I have for you guys here is, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. And that's from our good old friend Thomas Edison. What a great way to start the show. And the second one I have here for you is, the strongest people are those who win battles we know nothing about. So true. Shout out to both of those people for submitting those inspirational lines. Please keep sending those in. I really appreciate them. It's a great way to get the show started. Before we get started on this episode, if you're watching, first of all, I appreciate you. Second of all, please like, comment, share, subscribe, give 5 stars, share with someone who might need to hear this episode. Let's keep this conversation going, guys. I hope you guys enjoy. I'll talk to you soon. Peace. I'm Harry Potvin, and this is the H Panel.
Where are you coming from? Where do you live?
I'm in Ontario, Canada.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, great,
Cool.
great white north.
Cold.
Yeah, it's been a pretty warm winter.
Okay.
We've only had like a couple days where it's been like 6 feet of snow, and then that's an exaggeration, but like enough
Wow.
snow where it feels like 6 feet.
Where you could do something with it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
exactly. Yeah, where are you from again?
I live in Massachusetts, Cape Cod
Right on.
in the US. Yeah.
How's the
Yeah.
lockdown down there with you guys?
It's been a weird day. I mean, it's not too bad, but I've I had an interview earlier with someone from the UK, and they were like, we were just told to lock down. I got to close up. Like, he really sounded like he was in a scurry.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what's going on. Just so you know, Harry, sometimes my internet stinks. So if sometimes, like, all of a sudden you don't hear me, I just unplug my mic and plug it back in for whatever reason that works.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So if you
I'll let you know if there's anything.
Yeah. Okay.
It's the power of editing.
Exactly. But I've just noticed that's been happening, and people have been like, where'd you go? But I'm usually right back in like 10 seconds.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's all good. I'm not exactly perfect on my end, so don't worry.
Okay.
That
And your
actually,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, there was this time. Well, there's been so many episodes like when I first started where
Yeah.
I would film it, and then it would either the audio would get screwed up for whatever reason,
Mm-hmm.
or the file would just get deleted completely because I'd forget to save it. So there's been so
Yeah.
many times where I'm like, no, please. And like one time I ran out of storage on my old laptop, so I had to scurry and get my mom's,
uh,
FaceTime the guy, but you can't screen record a FaceTime because they don't let you
yeah.
keep the audio. So 3/4 of that interview were gone. I was like, no,
Oh,
brutal. So I'm definitely not perfect on my end, but I gotta get
yeah.
there.
And then your show's on mental health, right?
Yes.
Pretty much. Okay.
I
Yep.
I started off with like mental health and kind of like people's stories and trying to inspire the viewers. Um,
Right.
this season I'm more, it's still mental health, but I'm gearing more towards like not only ways that you can improve it yourself, like solutions you can go out and look for, but I'm trying
Okay.
to like I'm trying to, what am I saying? Yeah, no, it's more like solutions and like different ways people can battle their like face it head on. I think a part of
Sure.
that is also me trying to figure things out for myself,
Okay.
just
Sure.
like different techniques and questions. So I'm trying to
Okay.
expand it to more avenues. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and if you're, I'm really, I find real life examples kind of give it more substance. So if you wanted to use yourself, if you're comfortable with that, like we could work with that. If you see an opportunity, I'm good with that if you are.
Incredible. Yeah. Yeah, no,
Okay.
it's way easier for me to tell stories now because I've I'm almost completely like separate from those stories now. Like I'll tell them, I don't even recognize it's me. It just I feel
Yeah.
like I'm telling a story of someone else, so it's a lot easier now than, when I was in the thick of it.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
So my first question for you, I wanted to get to know you a little bit better. So what got you into this line of work? What inspired the books you've written? What made you become Sherianna Boyle today?
Well, I actually went to school for all of this, which is kind of unlikely now. A lot of people go to school and then they don't do anything.
Yeah.
But I actually am using my degree. So I have a license as a school psychologist. I went to school for psychology. So I've always been interested in it and always liked to study it. It found the one thing that I kind of stuck to and that I could connect to more so than other things. And and then eventually I would get trained in mind body kinds of techniques and tools and certifications and all that kind of stuff. And I did that for maybe about 10 years. I was doing all sorts of everybody else's stuff, right? Which seems to be how it happens. People study under other people. And then it was really Emotional Detox was sort of the breaking point for me. That book, which I published in 2018, and Emotional Detox is actually the it's the seventh book out of all the books I've written. And I always say, I don't think I could have wrote it if I didn't write the six other books. And I feel like each of those six play a role in that emotional detox. And then eventually I would write Emotional Detox for Anxiety, which came out about a year later. So that's when I really kind of branched off and I started to discover my own method of handling mental health or relationship things or whatever was showing up for people. I started to discover something new based on everything that I learned in my own experiences in life.
Right on. Yeah. I think what a lot of people don't realize is that therapists also need therapy and like solutions for themselves. I know um I know a lot of people who like when they would go to therapy, that wasn't even a second thought. They were like, yeah, these therapists are these beings that have all the answers and know everything themselves, but everyone's just a person who's trying to get through it. So I love what you're
Mm,
doing. It's great. And it
yeah.
really, I'm sure it's helping a lot of people. I read a bit into your work and it's really awesome.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things that I learned early on that I actually would teach, I don't teach anymore. I don't really resonate. I mean, you change and you grow, the information changes and grows as well, and you try things out. But yeah, of course. I mean, I think that we are human. Anyone who's in the profession of helping others, I think it's kind of the new way now, don't you, Harry? I mean, the old way was sort of the therapist knows or the doctor knows, and even physicians and medical people are now starting to share their stories. And it's such a great thing to have that. It helps people understand it's not just someone telling me what to do, someone who's actually been through it themselves.
Yeah, exactly. There's a way more effective way of leading and teaching when you're transparent. Some things you obviously don't have to tell people, but like in terms of like you figuring things out and you struggling, there's like it's way more effective to just be open about what you're going through. That way there's like a little more of a human connection.
Yeah, and it makes it believable. I think that's the other piece that Emotional Detox sort of broke the barrier for me is I was no longer learning from other people's stories. I was actually beginning to share. I mean, I'd shared my stories from childhood and things like that in some of the other books, about what I grew up with. However, emotional detox ended up, I didn't intend this to happen, but I was doing the research for the book about emotions. I had presented it all to the publisher, and I presented it to Simon and Schuster, and they said, this looks interesting, but you need to do more work. And I said, okay. So I went back and I went and did more stuff. I did everything they asked me to do. I went back, presented it again. They were like, okay, now you've got something worth writing about. So that's how it kind of began. And so I was super excited. I was stoked. I was like, yay, I can't believe I made it. Every author is like trying to get with recognized by a bigger publishing house. At least I was. And then maybe like 5 weeks later, I was struck with the worst news of my life. And it would impact my family, it would impact my work, it would impact everything, my physical health, my mental health. And it was a long-term crisis. And that was devastating on so many levels at the time because I couldn't write a book. I mean, I was a mess.
Mhm.
And so I went back to Simon Schuster. I'm like, I can't, I'm a mess and I can't write this. And they were great. And they said, well, go ahead and take the time you need. And when you're ready, pick it up again. And that's what I did. So what ended up happening was emotional detox is not just me doing the research and presenting these ideas and concepts, but I actually went through an emotional detox myself. And so that helped shape this book in a way where it became very relatable. A lot of people tell me they can relate to it, even if it isn't the same exact situation. They can relate to what this book is all about. So it ended up being a blessing in disguise, but it was not an easy one to go through for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, shout out to who were the people you said?
Simon Schuster,
Yeah,
the publishing company. Yeah.
shout out to them for, actually recognizing that you were struggling and giving you the freedom to go, help yourself, because I know a lot of people uh this is a story that it's someone I interviewed previously. She's a 15-year-old hockey player from Illinois,
Wow.
and she was going through her own mental struggles, and she went to her hockey coach and said, listen, like, I'm
Mm.
really struggling with, suicidal thoughts and depression. I need some time to figure things out. And the coach goes, yeah, no problem, do your thing. And then the next day, she gets an email that says, you're not allowed on the team anymore. They're like, we
Wow.
don't we don't want you to be on because you're going to be a burden to the other girls.
Wow.
So, like, shout out to the publishing company for
Yeah.
recognizing it and giving you that freedom, because there's a lot of, I don't want to call them uneducated. I feel like it's a little harsh, but in
Yeah.
reality that's what it is. They don't know how to handle things like that. So that's something we got to tackle big time.
Yeah, I do look back and I find I'm very grateful for that. I'm also grateful they could have stolen my ideas and ran with it because I had a lot of ideas and I know authors who have put ideas out there and who have had them taken from them, because they're a no name. And then next, I've heard a lot of stories. So it's us authors, that at least the circle I've spoken with, we do worry about that because if you put a celebrity's name on it, it's going to sell a lot more. But, sometimes that happens in the industry. That didn't happen in this case. They were very much like, no, this is your thing and you just do it when you can. And, in the time you're always thinking, oh God, I don't know if I'll ever get to it. But I think more often than not, I don't know if you found this, Harry, is we're so much more resilient than we may realize. And before you know it, we're back on our feet. And when you're in it, it feels like it's going to be forever. And then you look back, you even go 6 months ahead and you're like, wow, like I'm really, I'm in a whole different position right now than I was just 6 months ago. But I think at the time it's hard to see that.
Yeah, you've got like no, not tunnel vision, but like, oh, there's a term for it. I don't know what it is. But you're like just in the moment. You're not even looking at like, oh, in a couple months it's going to be better just with the work. You're like, this is it and this is where it ends.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's like a catastrophe, I mean, that's sort of what it felt like on my end. And it was it was everything. It was financially, it was mentally, emotionally, it had to do every area of my life. So, but the good news is I became really, well, as far as the steps of the emotional detox, I really worked with them and played with them, and I got mad at them, and I wrestled with them, and I tossed them aside, and I brought them back. I really had sort of this, no, this isn't going to work. Yes, this is going to work kind of mentality, because I knew, I could identify what people could be going through or who had been through difficult times in their life. So it was actually perfect writing it from that standpoint. I don't think I could write that book again, Harry. I don't think I have it in me. Just like you were saying before, you can share your story because it doesn't even feel like you anymore. I sort of feel that way about emotional detox. I can go talk about it because I'm not in it. I'm through it, and it's a whole different feeling. But I couldn't write it like I wrote it back then.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a couple questions about the emotional detox practice.
Yeah.
Because I've personally never heard the term emotional detox. So when I was diving through your work, there's one question that kept popping up in my mind, and it's because I have the mentality of a 5-year old. And it just kept ringing every time, and it's the only question I could get out. What is emotional constipation?
Oh, you must have, I think I wrote a blog on that or something. You're funny.
Yeah, I
I
just heard the term. I was like, what is
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like it's exactly what constipation feels like, I mean, it's just all bound up, wound up in your body, emotional suppression. And when you bury and you pour a lot of reactivity on it. So the best way to describe an emotional detox is to think about it in terms of a physical detox. And a physical detox, you drink a juice or something, your intention is to get rid of all the toxins and the impurities, and then you hope you gain energy and you feel better, right? It's the same thing with an emotional detox, only the difference is we are clearing our reactions to our emotions because we've learned to either suppress them, repress them, avoid them, distract ourselves from them, bury them, act on them. And those I call reactions. What we're doing is we're clearing the reactions, so that you can actually feel the emotions pure as is. Because the emotions are actually not the problem, it's the way that we react to them. So it's the same thing like with food. If there's a piece of food and it's got chemicals on it, it's going to be a little nutritious, right? But if you buy or if you pick a piece of fruit off a tree and there's no chemicals and it's organic, it's going to be really nutritious. It's going to taste different. It's going to feel different. It's going to smell different. It's the same thing with your emotions. The reactions influence the amount of, I'm going to call it nutrition that you get from them. And just like over processed food can constipate you and doesn't help you sort of digest and release and excrete all that waste, it's the same thing with our emotions. It's just it's in the non-physical.
Right. Yeah, that's so interesting. And like the fact, like you just said, the fact that it's non-physical, I
Mm,
think kind of makes people shrug it off.
yeah.
Um, it seems I've never done it, but emotional detoxing, it kind of seems to be this like incredibly underrated form of practice.
Mhm.
When we're looking not just at mental health upkeep. Wow, that's a new one.
That could be a new word. I like that.
I just invented a new word here on this
You
podcast.
did. I love
Perfect.
that. Yep.
This mental upkeep, um, but also like proper body maintenance. So why is there such an underrated quality to these techniques that you offer?
I think we were taught about our emotions, but I feel like we were only taught a little bit about them. We didn't get the whole picture. And therefore, everybody's been really trying to make sense of them off very little information. It's like buying something and you don't, I don't know if you've ever had to put something together and you get like instructions and you order something online and you're like, these directions suck. Like, I have
Yeah.
no idea how to do this. This is awful. This could have been so much better. That's sort of the way I feel about emotions. Like, we were given them and we weren't really given the whole picture. And the thing that was left out. Now I have a case of messing up words where now it's contagious, right?
I'm sorry. I'm
The
so
thing
sorry.
we're gonna people in your audience are gonna start talking funny. So anyway, um, is the processing part. So we were taught how to label them. We were taught how to talk about them, and that's good, but we weren't really taught how to process them. And processing an emotion and talking about an emotion are not the same thing.
Hmm. Yeah, I remember when I went to therapy, and I had gone so many times, like, and that's side note, that's something I stress to viewers and friends also, is like, the first time you go to therapy or the first time you take medication or whatever, it might not work because it might not be for you, and that often gets people discouraged. So this might have been like the fifth or sixth therapist I had seen, and she finally was a good one, and I was like, yes, let's go. I was hyped. But she said, because I used to have a case of being extremely hot-headed,
Mm,
um, and I was a competitive swimmer for 11 years, but I would have a bad race, and I would get so pissed off that the only emotion I knew how to recognize was angry, because as young boys and kids in general, but the two emotions that are really highlighted are like angry and happy. Those are the two that,
yeah,
and sad, I guess. But
yeah.
growing up, the only role models I had expressed their sadness through anger. So like the older
Yeah.
swimmers on the team, like they would have a bad race, they'd punch the lockers, they'd like swear at the refs, like all these things, and that's what I looked up to. So that's kind of how I expressed my emotions. Um, and I'm not proud of it at all. It was it's really embarrassing. And every time I tell the stories, my friends are like, "What is wrong with you?" I'm like, "Dude, I don't know. That's not me anymore. I can't get that physically angry." But
Uh-huh.
she told me, like, when you're feeling these emotions, like you're feeling angry, overwhelmed, anxious, what have you, she told me to kind of mentally take a step back and address it as if you're watching a movie, as opposed to
Mm,
living in the movie. And I found that
mm,
helped me so much. And then another technique she told me was, let's say I have an anxious thought, and
mhm,
it's making me overthink things. So I, I don't know an example. Let's say I'm in a relationship and I think my partner's cheating on me, and I
mhm.
have that thought, and I'm convincing myself that it's a thing, because you don't tell anyone and you just let your brain soak in it. What she
Right.
told me was to take a step back, go, oh look, there's that crazy thought you're having. There it goes,
Yeah.
and just
Uh-huh.
let it go and address it like that, as opposed to embrace it. And that helped so much.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, those are great,
Yeah.
great ways to handle that for sure. Yeah. I mean, and so from the emotional detox perspective, and it's a perspective, and it's not that it's better, it's just there's different angles of the way that I would support someone, coach someone through that is, the reaction of blowing up. That there's a feeling there, when you blow up. I mean, that's in a pretty intense energy. If you think about it from an energetic standpoint, things have to, even, I'm sure there was heat in your body.
Oh
i'm
yeah.
sure i'm sure it was escalated and pretty intense, and at times like feeling like it just was almost out of control kind of thing, and that's great that you're able to kind of simmer that down in that way. And then from the cleanse, which is the 7 steps of an emotional detox, it would be a matter of really releasing that blow up, that releasing, cleansing the reaction would be the blow up.
Hmm.
So it would be the way that at the time you were managing a feeling of loss or disappointment or frustration or whatever it was. And then there alongside of that is probably a lot of things you were telling yourself that, or, maybe all sorts of behaviors or thoughts or stories. And that's probably why it was so huge, because it wasn't just one or two things. Probably a lot of things were happening. And you probably put a ton of pressure on yourself.
Hmm.
Right. That's a big pressure, especially 11 years. And so that's what we would be releasing in the cleanse is all those reactions, and underneath them it would give those emotions permission to be transformed into something new. And so it would be, something new would be an energy that feels more like a release kind of thing. I mean, really what was coming in was it's almost like your higher self knew that you needed a release, and it just was releasing in a way that was destructive, right? So then we would kind of move in that direction of creating the energy of what it feels like to kind of release something and honor something and digest something in a way where you get some wisdom from it, because that's what happens when you process your emotions. You get an understanding and a deeper wisdom of yourself that you might not have had otherwise.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So what are the steps to the 7 steps, sorry, to your emotional detox cleanse?
So it's actually in the acronym of cleanse so people can remember it. And the first step, then they go in order and they build on each other. And so they're not meant to be mixed up or taken out of order. And I worked hard on that. I did take them out of order. I did everything that people might want to do. I've already done it. It doesn't work. So you have to bring them in, keep them in nice order. And so the first step is C, which is clear reactivity, which is basically a grounding, centering exercise. Uh, it's really preparing your body for feeling.
Hmm.
The second step is called look inward, which is the L, which is I give people some guidance on how to identify, acknowledge your emotions without running all those stories. So again, in your situation, you probably had a lot of stories. So you actually weren't feeling, you were reacting. So I'm sure you know that, but we have to be clear on that when we're cleansing.
Right.
Even though you're calling it anger and rage, in the emotional detox view, that anger and rage is a reaction, not an emotion.
Right.
If it were truly an emotion, you would feel better,
Hmm.
because emotions make us feel calm, safe, grounded, and peaceful. When reactions is what makes us feel afraid, scared, disappointed, whatever it is, they're reactions. And I know we're used to calling one thing one the other thing. So I'm going to say those were reactions. And then you would identify what that felt like to lose that game.
Hmm.
What it felt like and that's where you get some substance. How did that make you feel when you missed whatever, your time or whatever it was that made you feel that way? How did it make you feel? And giving yourself a chance to identify it, to feel it. And then the next step is in E, which is called emit, which is a mantra. And the mantra, what it does is it increases your vibration, because you've identified some things, but now we're going to bring in a little cushion of vibration mantra to support you in the transformation of that. After the E is the A, which is the activate. And it's like, okay, great. I have some vibration now. I've identified, where am I heading? What am I going to focus on now? Where's my attention? And that's that A, which is activate. What am I activating? So I'm releasing one thing, I'm activating something else. And then the N is called nourish, which is just a deeper experience of that activation. The S is surrender, which is some statements that I give people. And it's basically free will, Harry. you have to choose it. People can walk you to that line, but ultimately you choose this path. Nobody can choose it for you. Nobody can feel your feelings for you. Nobody can stop your feelings, control your feelings, manage your feelings. You have to choose it. So that surrender is basically your free will statement saying, I choose to allow this. And then the E is ease, which is where you land in that I am presence, which is that I am space, remembering that this is who you are, who you've always been. It's just you're having an experience here and you're working through that as a spiritual being.
Awesome. Yeah. And you have to, if I remember this correctly, you have to continuously repeat this method, the cleanse method.
Yeah, it's a practice. So it's
Right.
designed it's a good question. It's designed to take people 10 minutes. And Emotional Detox for Anxiety really kind of lays that out. That book lays out that process for people. Emotional Detox, the core book, lays the foundation down, gives you all the concepts. And Emotional Detox for Anxiety really gives you more of the practice of that, of what that's going to look like on a day to day basis. They both are very similar, but very different books. I also have a new book coming out. It's in 221, but it's not anytime soon. Um, and that I've written 135 emotional detoxes so that people can literally just guide themselves through, because so many people like yourself say, okay, so I'm supposed to do this every day, right? It's going to be 10 minutes. And so I was like, I'm going to write them down so that people can literally take themselves through an emotional detox every day. So that's coming in 221.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to ask that because I know a lot of people, especially with mental health, like with physical, it's almost the same thing where like let's say you break a leg. I hear this analogy all the time, but let's say you break a leg, you have to continuously go to rehab and do exercises. But with mental health, what a lot of people do, and I've done this myself, is they'll do it once and go, "Oh, I'm fine now." They
Yeah.
underestimate the power of repetition.
Yes. Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah. Well, to change the brain, you have to do repetition. I
Hmm.
mean, that's really what you're doing when you feel your emotions. It's not just a thing. You're actually changing your brain and your body. So, um you have to you have to do it every day for
Yeah.
sure.
Right. The brain is so fascinating. I love the brain. I'm not smart enough to study it fully, but just the power it has, it named itself. So right off the bat, the power it has is just so interesting. I don't even know another word to use. You,
Yeah, it is a fascinating organ. And my microphone went out for a second, but can you hear me okay?
yep.
Okay. Yeah. It's fascinating, and we're really learning so much about it. And the best thing, I teach psychology. That's my other job, is I teach at a local college. And I always tell my students, if there's anything that you take from this class, remember you can change your own brain,
Hmm.
right? Don't get this in your head that maybe if you had a hard time in school, that's what you're stuck with. You're always going to have a hard time learning. Not true.
Yeah.
You can change your brain. You can change your personality. If you don't like yourself, you can actually change that. So, um, that's what I always share with them. Just remember that the brain is called, it's neuroplasticity. We have the ability to change our own brains, and I believe emotions can help us with that. I know they can.
Yeah, 1,000%. That's really important because I know a lot of people who are in a slump or are in like a negative mental space like every
Mhm.
day. And I go like, what, here are some, like, I don't give them advice, but I'm like, you should go, check these things out. They might help you. And they just go, it's just the way I am.
Yeah.
Like, well, that's the cycle. That's the dangerous cycle you're getting in.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, you can sort of get that. You can you can get yourself in a slump, and it's great people like you are willing to kind of reach out and encourage people, because I think that's what people need, just a little encouragement. And they might have to hear more times than you want to offer it, um but that's okay. It's sometimes we need someone to say, or sometimes it needs to come from someone else. They don't hear us. But then you're like, I've been telling you that for like 10 years now, and you listen to this one, that kind of thing. It's just the way it is, right? It's just, we don't get to dictate the pace of it and when
Mhm.
it happens, but we can certainly encourage people.
It's like when your friend is in a bad relationship and you've been telling them for years to get
Yeah.
out of it, and then one person says you should probably break up with them, and then they do, and you're like, what have I been saying?
Exactly. Exactly.
So what are some things to remember in regard to like what to avoid when we're conducting this emotional detox
Mm.
ourselves?
Yeah, that's a good question as well. Well, there's really nothing to, you mean as far as in physically. I mean, I do talk about in the core book, Emotional Detox, and this is part of my journey. So when I went through my trauma and crisis, I don't I had been thinking about it for years, for years. And for whatever reason, when this crisis hit, I was like, done, it's today. And that is to really, for me, I'm not saying people need to do this to be on emotional detox. For me, there were some things that I was eating food wise
Hmm.
that were, and so it really can interfere with your digestive system. So anything that interferes with your digestion is going to interfere with your production of certain neurotransmitters that are produced in the gut. And we're trying to create a connection between your brain and your gut, because what's happening in your gut is going to communicate to your brain how you're doing.
Hmm.
So it's really hard to just go through the brain, and because they're talking all the time. So be mindful, don't have to be perfect, but if you're overdoing anything in excess, like alcohol or drugs, or, people sort of have their vices, their ways that they avoid feeling, and they might not even realize. Sometimes they eat, sometimes they, who knows? So these are some things that are in that core book, Emotional Detox, that I talk about when I did the research on the gut health and how that impacts our ability to feel. Because if your gut is not healthy, you might misread things,
Hmm.
because your brain's going to say certain things, it's going to communicate, then your perception goes off, and it's just becomes a really tangled up thing. So I personally, on my emotional detox, I did kind of make some changes. I used it as an opportunity. I'm like, I'm in crisis. I might as well do it.
Right. Yeah.
Can't get much worse than this. I might as well give up sugar, make it a little worse. Things like that. So that can help a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, yeah. So hopefully that answers your questions on the avoidance thing.
Yeah, definitely. That's another thing you said when I was looking up stuff that I really found interesting was you mentioned like we have a chakra in our stomach, and every time I
Mm.
hear about the chakra or like the third eye, I think of in between the two because
Yeah,
of yoga and all of
sure.
the things. But
Uh-huh.
you raise a very interesting point where there's one in your gut as well because they're constantly communicating.
Yeah.
So can then you use emotional detox as a way to lose weight then? Is that what that means?
Well, the first step of an emotional detox clear reactivity is actually exercises that tone your vagus nerve, which is the largest nerve in your body, and it's really the one of the nerves that holds trauma. So whenever you react, so for example, use your swimming thing where you got angry, it's likely that it was so intense because you had a memory of it already in your body. So you had
Mm,
a memory of anger. So your body replays the memory, and every time it replays, it does feel stronger and more intense. Sometimes our memories are based on our own personal experiences. Sometimes they're based on what we've been around. So if we've been around people in rage or anger, our bodies remember that. They pick up on that. They feel that. And so it's a lot of emotional reactivity is really memory in the body. And we also have a soul memory. So don't get too caught up in who said what and who did what. And this is the one that's blamed for all my stuff, right? Because it could go beyond that, it could go further in the lineage genetically. So I got off track of your question, but that's really, what was your question? The original question.
Gosh, Sherianna, come on, get it together. Can you use the detox as like a weight loss option?
Oh, weight loss. That's right, about weight loss. So yes, when you tone the vagus nerve, that can assist with weight loss. And of course, if you're cleaning up your gut, you're going to lose weight,
Right.
right? You're also going to be more aware of your bodily signals. So if you're feeling what you feel, you're going to know, you're going to recognize, wow, when I feel bored or I feel alone or I reach for potato chips.
Mm,
Right? And you're going to start to make that connection, and maybe I could interrupt that cycle and really give myself permission to feel. And what's nice about those 7 steps of the cleanse is it gives people a structure, because a lot of people are like, well, what, okay, then what am I supposed to do? Not just sit here, do nothing and not have any fun, right?
yeah.
But you have a structure. I always say, go to your cleanse, go to step 1. That's what you do. Step 1. It will never hurt you. None of these will. None of these steps will hurt you. They will only help you. So why not?
Hmm. Yeah, and it's only 10 minutes.
10 minutes, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Sometimes the dog barks. Sometimes someone rings your phone,
Hmm.
right? Sometimes you feel like, just do it, because the body has memory. So I just sit down in my chair every morning with my coffee and I go through the steps. Sometimes I get interrupted. That's okay. I do what I need to do, get up, sit back down, finish the cleanse. It doesn't look perfect. It doesn't mean you have to be like in this deep meditative state and remove the entire world. It's just not realistic. You
Hmm.
just have to acknowledge the feelings, center your body, acknowledge, raise your vibration, put your attention on what you're creating, and then go to your free will statement and make a very conscious choice. And believe me, the universe is listening. And the more you do it, the more clear it becomes. And before you know it, it feels weird not doing it,
Right.
right? It feels like, oh, I definitely have a better day when I do it.
Hmm.
And that's why I turn to it. I don't turn to it now because it's a habit or routine, because I notice a difference in the way I feel.
Yeah, that's a great point because I've done the same thing but with exercise, because
Mm.
once swimming was done, I gained a ton of weight because you're used to like 10 practices or
I
8 to
bet.
10 practices a week, like cardio on cardio. But I had none of that, but I had the same appetite. And then when I started working out again, I kind of viewed it as like a chore or like something I had to do. But then when I kind of geared from that point of view to I want to aim to feel good, that made
Mm.
working out so much easier because
Yeah.
it's not like a chore or anything. It's I feel better when I do this, so I should probably do it. It's the same thing with your cleanse.
Yeah. And I work out too. I mean, it
Right.
helps me. Yeah. I mean, it's the whole kit and caboodle. And I think, you're young, but as you get older, you need everything.
Mm. Right. Yeah.
When I was younger, maybe exercise could cut it. But if you're still finding challenges in your relationships, challenges at work, things are still not clicking for you, feeling stuck, or like you said, some of your friends just can't get out of their own way, then you might need a little bit more.
Mhm.
Exercise is great. You might want to add the cleanse. Life does have a lot of stress in it. I mean, it really is, especially now with COVID. And that means we have to do a little bit more self-care we've been told in the past. In the past, it was minimal.
Yeah.
Now it's everyone's realizing we have to up the ante because the stress levels have gone up. Um, but we're also changing, and we're really we're evolving very different now.
Hmm.
And so people are like yourself are really showing, this is a path for somebody, and you can still get everything done, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they there was a study BBC did uh
Hmm.
about human touch, but it kind of relates to this as well.
Hmm.
They were saying that people replaced like their stress and like during this pandemic, people
Hmm.
replaced their stress and the need for human interaction with exercise. And they found that while it did help, there were also like increased levels of loneliness and mental health cases were on the rise, because exercise is great but they used it as a cushion as opposed to addressing their problems head on.
Yeah. Yeah, and let's face it, it's easy to go exercise now, very convenient to put your headset in and just, escape,
Hmm.
right? Escape. Just say, you know what? I'm taking a mental break. I don't want to be, and that's fine. I do that too. I listen to music, and sometimes that can bring some processing of emotions, but eventually you have to deal with stuff. Right
Yeah.
here. I mean, you really have to acknowledge, okay, that's an area of my life that's unresolved, right? And it could be a lot of things. And it doesn't mean you have to go to the person and dig everything up, but you do need to resolve emotionally in your body what keeps rearing its head, that you might be pushing back down, pushing back. No, not the time. No, not the time. No, I don't want to do that. And it's that really that's what we've learned to do, that we just march on.
Hmm.
But now we know physically, you know, that we pay the price for that. People get sick, their immune system goes down, they get anxiety, they get depression, they get, they get into situations that are not healthy, that can be dangerous sometimes, or addicted to something. It's just not worth it.
Right. It's like when you see that your lawn needs to get cut and you go, I'll cut it next week. And then you just
Yeah, that's a
keep
good one.
going, I'll cut it
Yeah.
next week until you open the door and the grass hits you in the face because it's way too high. And there's like all these ugly creatures in there and it's like impossible to take care of. So addressing it head on, like you said, important. So uncomfortable, but important.
for but in the cleanse it's not, but
Right.
it can, people could view it that way for sure.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you might get a little tightness in your body, or a little, tension in your neck. um that's okay, right? You move through that, because by the third step that's all going to be alleviated,
Right.
right? So that's why the steps go in order, because I know that someone eventually realizes, I can bring this up because I know step 3 is going to make me feel good.
Mm.
And I know step 4 is going to help me get some clarity and focus and on what it is that I'm creating. So you learn to trust the steps, and you just go through it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I'm definitely gonna try it out.
Yeah.
Um, on the
That'd be
topic of
great.
feeling, why do you think, like when we talk when we talk to people who are maybe in a slump, and we say, "How are you feeling?" Like address your emotions or embrace your emotions or whatever the term is,
Mhm.
we're met with a laugh or a. "Pfft." Well, why is that? And how can we get rid of that? "Pfft," so that everyone can actually embrace their emotions, address them, and get to a higher level of self improvement.
Yeah, that's a good question. It actually starts with us, not them. So if we're around someone who's just kind of minimizing what we're saying, or laughing it off, sarcastic, that's simply the way that they're managing what they feel. And that is their choice.
Hmm.
That's the way they want to manage their emotions. That's it. If we go home and think to ourselves, okay, how can I do this differently? What can I say? What can I do? How can I? We're so focused on them, right? That what's going to happen is we're now managing the way we feel
Right.
by wondering how to help them. And now we're doing the same thing they're doing. It's just theirs may not look as pretty.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really about us looking at, okay, what's going on with me right now that I want to fix this,
Right.
right? And what's coming up in me that is looking to be processed emotionally. And that's really where it begins. So I do very little now, Harry. I mean, I've seen massive changes in people around me that I would normally be like, yeah, I know this is like not your thing kind of thing, who have blown me away with the self-awareness and the level of consciousness. And it really is because I'm no longer um, focusing on them. And they're able, what happens is we're able to be a reflection to them of feeling, and instead of fixing. People know when you're trying to fix them. They will
Yeah.
sniff you out.
Mm-hmm.
They'll sniff you out and they might even resist a little harder because they now don't want to do it because they don't want you to get the credit,
Right.
right? And they want the credit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's their thing.
The human brain is so stubborn. I
Exactly.
I was the same way when people would give me like it was different when people were like just sat down and listened to what I was dealing with, but when people said you have to do this, I said, "Hell no." No way. I'm not going to do it just because you told me to.
Yeah,
And because
now I'm really not doing it, right?
yeah, no, exactly. Because you told me to do it, I'm going to not do it even harder.
Exactly.
That was my thought process. That's a great point though, because when people shrug it off or go, "It's just how I am," you often focus more on that person when, like you said, you should be focusing on yourself more.
Yes.
That's a great point. I feel like if people did that more, there'd be a lot less stress in friend groups because I hear that a lot, like where people go, "Oh, uh, Dan is so annoying doing this, la la la." It's like, well, okay, you're stressing yourself over what someone else is doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you do. You focus on yourself and then you see what happens. And honestly, I mean, through my emotional detox, now again, I was in crisis, but you do kind of learn who your true friends are.
Mm,
And you do kind of through osmosis or whatnot, as you start to process things, there is likely going to be new people that come into your life, and there will be some people that fade away. It doesn't mean it's forever. Sometimes they might just fade in the background for a little while and then
mhm.
resurface later. I've had that happen as well. And the idea is just to trust. Right? We're not supposed I don't think we're supposed to just talk to the same people all the time, right? I mean,
No,
that's not very interesting.
it'd be boring.
So it's boring. Exactly. So it's okay to just sort of let people go at their own pace and doesn't mean you have to be like, you know what, you're toxic. I'm not going to be around you anymore. You just bring me down, blah, blah, blah. That's all a reaction as well.
Hmm.
So calling people toxic, judging, comparing. We don't need to go to that place. We just sort of let it happen naturally and
Right.
know that, oh, okay, this is interesting that I'm hearing less of this person. They're not calling me as much, they're not texting me as much. Um, but I'm also processing my emotions more. So that's really interesting to me how, as I feel more, I don't hear from them as much. And just letting that be and just observing in awe how your life is shifting a little bit. It could possibly mean that new people are going to come in. I have a lot of really great, not a lot, I have a few of really wonderful, authentic people in my life that I can trust. I
Hmm.
never had that before.
Right.
I always had people I felt couldn't trust. I have it now. And it's a wonderful feeling when you get that small group of people that you really feel are in your camp. And I really believe it's because I processed my emotions and I drew them to me.
Yeah, it's a big reason why when you ask a lot of people, they don't have any friends from high school anymore, or they're not
Mm,
close with them anymore.
mm,
It's the exact reason. I got lucky. My small circle in high school is
mhm.
actually still my small circle.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
and I
Yeah.
consider myself thankful for that, because I know a lot of people who, when I tell them my friends are from, like, I met these guys in elementary school, and when I tell them that, they're like,
Mm.
"What? How are you still friends with them?" I'm like, "I don't know. I'm gonna get bored of them eventually, but until then."
Yeah, that's wonderful. I mean, that's a wonderful thing to have, and that's sacred.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm definitely lucky
Yeah.
in that respect. So another area of conversation I wanted to get at with you was, we've mentioned it a little bit here. Mantras.
Yeah.
So again, I didn't know much about them until I started researching them. So what I wanted to discuss, like, what exactly is a mantra, and how are we supposed to use them to our benefit?
So a mantra is a sound, syllable, word, or phrase that you repeat. And mantras, that's how they're different from an affirmation. Usually an affirmation is like a full statement you might say out loud, and they're very similar, mantras and affirmations. But again, a mantra could actually just be a syllable, like
Mhm.
lam or ah, or oh, it's a vibration. So mantra stands for it means man, and then tra means free, freedom of the mind. So mantra, freeing man's mind. That's the original description of it. They're intended to be repeated for 90 days for 180 times in a row when we talk about Sanskrit mantras. So
Mm.
Sanskrit mantras come from the Hindu language, which that language doesn't exist anymore. It only exists in the form of a mantra. And that's how they originated. And people would recite mantras as a way to create that vibration. And really, what they were doing is creating medicine. And they were creating, it was like the early manifestors who were, if they had a crop that wasn't doing well, they had mantras. If they felt like there was evil around them, they had a mantra. Or if somebody was really sick, there's mantras for that. Or so so they developed the mantras. They're thousands of years old. And then the mala beads are how people keep track of the counting. When people wear the mala beads around their neck,
Mm.
it's actually so you can keep track of what you're reciting. So you don't have to think, okay, one, two, three.
Right.
You just hold the bead and you move to the next bead. And it's really like a meditation practice. So that's the difference between when I wrote Mantras Made Easy, um, it has a chapter of Sanskrit mantras. It has a lot of just words, words or phrases that you can repeat that are small, because people won't repeat them 180 times if they're too long. Um, and so simple things, like the word love could be a mantra if you wanted it to be, or let go could be a mantra. It's again, what you're doing is you're creating a current and you're repeating it for 90 days for 180 times per day.
Mhm.
That's a mantra practice.
Right. That's a lot of times.
Yeah, I mean, I had 3 going when I wrote that book. I
Right.
had a couple of English, I had a Sanskrit. I would do it when I walk my dog. So I had my mala beads in my pocket, and I would know that I was done with my walk when I was done with my mantras, because it does having 3 in a row
Mm.
took some time, but I don't know. I guess I'm overambitious, but that's what I did.
The thing to take from that is, like your cleanse method, it can be implemented wherever, and it's so easy to
Mhm.
implement it, like once you get in the habit, of course. but like your cleanse
Yeah.
method was 10 minutes. These mantras,
Yeah.
you did them on your walk. Like it's not, you're not going out of your way. You're not inconveniencing yourself when you're doing these methods. And I think that's really
Yeah.
important for people to understand.
Yeah, you can. I mean, in 180 times, if you have a short mantra, again, I there's a lot of English ones in there because not everyone's open to the Sanskrit. The Sanskrit are stronger. They that those are the ones that have been around for thousands of years.
Hmm.
So they you can really feel their vibration, Ahim Prima, I believe, is in that book. Ahim Prima, Ahim Prima, Ahim Prima, Ahim Prima. That one is for universal divine love. That's what that means. Universal divine love. Ahim Prima, Ahim Prima, Ahim Prima. So you can hear that. I've already said it like maybe 7 times. I can
Hmm.
already feel the energy kicking in. And then I don't know, maybe that would take me maybe 10 minutes if I did
Yeah.
100 that mantra. And I know that one's in Mantras Made Easy.
Right. I feel the energy through the screen.
Yeah, it's a beautiful mantra. Him prima. I love that. I used to say that. I haven't. It's been a while since I've said that one.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Um, is there, because I know with like modern day spiritual practices, they mix up,
Mm,
like you mentioned, intentions and mantras often, like as in like words of affirmation, as opposed to like
mhm,
let's say uh, the personalized bija, which is like for viewers who don't know, and please jump in if I'm messing this up because I'm just a
mm,
rookie here.
yeah.
But it's like the sound vibration that the universe was making at the time of your birth.
Hmm.
So, is
Yeah.
there, for either or, is there one that's more effective?
I mean, as far as the difference between an affirmation or mantra, what are you saying? What's your
So, like,
question?
yeah, sorry, no, as like in regard to like a mantra, like a sound or a hum,
Oh,
um,
I see.
and a word of words of affirmation, like let's say you're meditating and you go, "I am focused" or "I am
Mhm.
beautiful." Like, is there one that's more effective than the other?
I think you have to try them out and see. I'm just going to go by my own personal experience.
Hmm.
Um, I think the nice part about a Sanskrit mantra is you don't get attached to the meaning of it, mainly because you don't know Hinduism, you don't
Right.
know the
Yeah.
language. When I say Ahim Plima, I just able to say the words and not really get into my head. However, with that said, I had um, a mantra going. I did a mantra practice in the English for my marriage for 180 times for 90 days. And that one was basically now that something I don't remember exactly. It was long though. And I remember I even interchanged a few words as I was saying it because, when you repeat it that many times, like all of a sudden you're saying a different version of it. But I just kept going with the basic intention. Now that my marriage is spiritually, mentally, physically connected, I'm so grateful and thankful. Something like that I had going now that my marriage is so great, and I did that for a while, and that really, really was very powerful.
Hmm.
Yeah.
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 Really transformed my marriage. I know it did.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So is one more than the other? I don't know. I think it's your intention. I think if it comes from your heart, right? It's not about fixing, changing, correcting. If it comes from that space of love and you commit to it. I think that's the biggest thing I learned when I wrote Mantras Made Easy is it's a practice of devotion.
Hmm.
So it's not a routine or a habit. It comes from your heart. It's a devotion. And it's a devotion to keeping these things alive. So when people wrote these mantras in Sanskrit, I mean, they were so incredibly devoted. I mean, they were protective. They would keep them in very sacred spaces. They would make sure nobody touched them. They were very careful how they were recorded because, as you write something, it gets changed And there were families in charge of safeguarding these mantras. Mantras were hidden for a long time because they're so powerful.
Mhm.
And it's really been the, people in spirituality of the study, we've uncovered these things and they're available now on the planet, but their vibration, you have to know when you're tapping into a Sanskrit mantra, you're tapping into an energy that's been going on for thousands of years. People have chanted these. So you're becoming part of that and you're devoted to keeping it whole as possible.
Right. And like the thing with that is like when I was looking into them and I was listening to them, you can feel those thousands of years of work in the
Yeah.
vibration. You feel it in I get goosebumps every time because
Yeah.
you're like part of this community now, this spiritual community. And
Hmm.
it's beautiful.
It
Love
is
that stuff.
beautiful.
Love that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. It really is.
I heard this one guy, I think his name, he's like a big guy on YouTube, Sad Guru. You've probably heard of him.
I'm sure I have.
Yeah, he's like this guy with a big beard and he like
Hmm.
does spiritual talks. But he was talking about how he personally thinks the vibration and the sound mantras are more powerful just because when you think of a word um or like a phrase, it's it's locked in, it already has a meaning. It's already been
Hmm.
labeled by, constant human repetition, or like a word was made by humans. Whereas when you get a sound or a vibration, it's left
Yeah.
to your own mind's interpretation.
Mm.
Meaning you can do a
Yeah.
lot more with it and your mind's a lot more unlocked. But like you said, it's a matter of your intention, because I feel like when you're repeating the word love, you're
Mm.
not in it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. Right. And when I was reciting that for my marriage, I mean, I was not happy.
Mhm.
I didn't like my marriage. I wasn't happy. I didn't feel loved or anything. And so when I did that, I mean, it was truly like it was almost like surrender.
Right.
It's like I can't do this anymore. I'm I need help. And when you go to those mantras, there is a bit of that, okay, I'm going to let something higher take this over for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to show up every day for you and I'm going to practice. And I think outside was also very powerful because I was outside on a walk, you're in nature.
Mm.
And and that's going to be how I show my love and belief in something higher is I'm going to show up here every single day for 180 days. And then I'm going to let this go and see what happens. And it ended up, well, then I ended up writing Emotional Detox. So there's more of the story in there.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the hard part, right? Letting yourself go for something higher. Because, like we said, the mind's stubborn. You're like, I don't want to. I'm the higher power.
Yeah. I mean, there's just, there's some things, with people you want to help, like you said, you want to help them. You're not really sure, you don't understand. Some people are holding back, the truth from you. They're not telling you everything. And that those are signs where it's time to surrender. When you feel like, God, I've asked this person a million times, what's going on? And I'm just not getting anything. Um, Surrender, let it go, give it to the mantra.
Right. Give it to the mantra, listeners.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the last three, well, the last two questions I've got for you are kind of the
Mm.
season questions. And
Mhm.
when this comes out, I'm really hoping that we're out of a lockdown, because our deadline is like end of January, but I do not see that happening. But if we're still in
Okay.
lockdown, hopefully there's like
Yeah.
light at the end of the tunnel at least.
Mhm.
So my first question for you is, with the pandemic, there's been multiple reports, and there's no surprise here, that mental illness cases reported have been higher.
Mhm.
Substance abuse has increased, domestic abuse has increased.
Yeah.
And a large portion of these numbers increasing can be linked tightly to, the huge amount of job loss around the world, the fear mongering that the
Mm.
media loves to give us, personal loss, this growing uncertainty about what the hell is going on. So where do we go from here, and how do we stop these numbers from rising?
I think the people need to take their power back, and we need to take our eyes off the media because we're giving them power,
Mhm.
and people that we believe are going to save us, whoever that may be, any kind of leaders or whatnot. And I think this is a time where people need to recognize we are far more powerful than they may realize. And we're all kind of like, okay, what do I do? How can how do I handle this? And of course we follow the rules and do the right thing, but on the inside, we can transform this and we can come out better than we are. Some people are already shifting in a better way and learning about what's important. And I know a lot of children that I've worked with that are actually feeling relief from being at home. And I know there's a lot of children that are not. So, um, it's really difficult. I think so many things are changing, and our education system, needs to change
Mm.
and be transformed. Um, Media, like you mentioned, there's so many things. We realize how much we've been influenced, the propaganda, the marketing,
Oh my god, yeah.
the everything. And so I I'm always going to say to feel, because the more we can process our feelings every day, these emotions, the best part about them is they have a physical anatomy, but they have a non physical anatomy. So that means they're the one thing about us that can cross barriers.
Mm.
So if we keep reaching for the physical, meaning what we can see, what we can touch, what we can control, we're only functioning off a fraction of what we're capable of. So I know it's scary if you lose your job. My husband, we've been hanging on by a thread with his job. Seems like every week we're like, okay, it's not where it's working. Oh, it's not working. Okay, better find a new job. And people are leaving, people are getting fired, people are quitting, people are scared. So I totally get it. We've been feeling it too. And we both, fortunately, just say, okay, we're just gonna feel. We're not gonna go into that reactive space, which would be, going into the what ifs, or turning, giving up kind of thing. That would be the worst case scenario. And trusting that when you really feel, you're going to transform things for the greater good, but do it for the people. Do it because when you help yourself, you help a lot of people on this planet. You bring
Mm.
a lot of light in.
Yeah, absolutely. Feeling is like breathing, where we do it every day, but it's
Yeah.
so underrated.
Yeah. And you need to breathe to feel.
Yeah,
There's got to be some breath in there for
right.
sure.
Yeah.
Got to have some oxygen happening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
a couple reasons.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's great. Yeah. Um, yeah, man. I didn't even realize this pandemic, and I'm sure a lot of people listening uh
Mm,
can relate to this. It's shown me just how bad the media gets. Like
yeah.
it's shown me a lot of things, first off, but that's definitely a big takeaway because obviously I get it. Negative media sells. I get it.
Mm,
But
mhm.
when everything you're posting is fear mongering, like how, and they're surprised that these cases are going up. Like when you turn your TV on in the morning, or you go on Twitter and you're like, oh, what's today gonna give me? And they're like,
Mm,
this many people died, or like there's riots in the streets and all these things, which by the way are always inflated. They're
yeah,
picking these cases and showing it to
sure.
you head on, and then you see that and you go, oh my god, the world is burning. I'm gonna die.
Yeah,
That like
right.
it's really shown me that you need to unplug,
Yeah.
as hard as it is.
Oh, well, it's just, there's just so many people behind these social medias that they're aware that the way to sort of control what you think, feel, believe, what you buy, what you are interested in, what you do, where you go can all be, they can influence you through all these devices and things like that. So that's why I say we have to have our own power, set our limits, and be aware that, what I'm seeing in my feed for news might not be what you're seeing in your feed. We
Hmm.
might look at the same topic and they're going to aggregate it. So I see a certain news feed that I believe in. You're going to see what you believe in, and they're not going to let us come together.
Right.
They're going to keep us separate because of those separate feeds. Our views will never get a chance. I'll never get to see your view. You'll never get to see my view. You'll just get stronger in yours. I'll get stronger in mine. And there's going to be no crossover. And that keeps us kind of powerless, right? So at some point, we have to look at it and say, okay, this is a view. But if I go look at my friend's phone who's researching the same thing or from a different town, it's going to look different,
Hmm.
and it's manipulative to be, right?
Yeah.
And they're well aware of that. And so I just use social media for business. I don't use it for news or anything like that.
Probably a good idea.
Yeah. I don't go to big tech to get my news. Um, you do the best that you can and follow your heart, and be kind and compassionate. And I think, quite frankly, I think pretty much there's more agreement than disagreement. I
Hmm.
think pretty much everybody does want the same thing. I think
Absolutely.
everybody wants peace and harmony and love and safety, and everybody to have opportunities to be successful. I think we're far more alike than we're different. And so the people have to come together and get stronger than the forces.
Yeah, absolutely. Have an open mind.
Yeah.
It's a big one.
Yeah.
I know a lot of closed-minded people that like you'll bring up an opinion. They're like, nope, nope, nope. Stop. You're wrong. I'm like, wait, what the? Didn't even finish. But yeah, like you said, when you
Yeah.
strip down all of like the negatives and all of
Yeah.
the like take media away and strip down a person's personality, we all want the same thing.
We really do.
Some of
I
us
think
don't. There's outliers, but that's math. Like
yeah.
just
Yeah.
peace and happiness. Like, you know how nice that would be? Oh, everyone thinks that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So my second question for you,
Mm.
uh, I've gotten a lot of people reaching out to me, uh, super stressed and super anxious about the fact that, you know, it's been pretty much a year of this lockdown.
Mhm.
And they haven't done anything quote unquote significant during this year of lockdown because, and I'm sure you remember this, but uh, I would go on social media like a month into the lockdown, and there'd be these influencers and these people like, what are you gonna do about it? Like, how are you gonna, be successful during this pandemic? This is your time, without really addressing how there's like a traumatic factor to what we're going through because none of us have been through a pandemic before.
Mhm.
So when you get all these messages, you start getting hard on yourself because you're
Mhm.
like, I'm not making $1 million. I'm not making an Oscar nominated movie right now. I'm just sitting at home traumatized, trying to catch up with the world. So what would you want to say to these people who may be feeling that anxiety or stress that they haven't done anything quote unquote significant during this lockdown?
Oh boy, well, I would look at from the perspective of how they're managing, and one of the ways that they're managing what they feel is to tell themselves they haven't done anything significant, right? So they have a story that's running, they have a belief, they have a um that I I'm locked down, right? And I would say to process what that feels like. What does it feel like to be, those words locked down? I mean, they're pretty strong words if you
Yeah.
think about it. It's a feeling of real confinement. It's almost, we're not in prison, but you could really make yourself believe like you
Mhm.
can't go anywhere, you can't do anything, you can't see anybody. But it gets irrational, right? Irrational meaning we get these irrational beliefs like, I can't do anything. Really? You can't do anything,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or nobody. Those kinds of words are, those are little signs that we're functioning with irrational beliefs. Irrational beliefs are one of the biggest contributors to stress.
Right.
And so if you're saying to yourself, I'm not doing anything significant, that's a pretty generalized statement. Anything, nothing, right?
You're living.
Really? You've done nothing significant, right? And then it's about, well, what do you mean? I mean, I'm not sure what they're missing there. You know, there's so much emotions there that are just being, it almost feels like a stone to me. You know, it
Right.
feels like a hardening. And those words, they feel like calluses, you know, they feel like walls and barriers. And so they're really barricading themselves and creating this, they're it's almost like they're making their world smaller and smaller. And probably these people are watching too much social media news, my guess. Again, take your power back. If it's affecting you, where you're going into irrational thinking, then you're going to want to start to tone that down and put limits on things, on how long, what you watch something funny, watch something that's going to make you laugh or take you away. And or you know, a lot of people have started new hobbies. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's been a lot of good things. People, you know, taking puzzles out and things like that, that to
Yeah.
do, or walking out, you know, bike sales. You can't even get a bike right now,
I
at
know.
least in the United States, right? I am, whether it's a stationary or I just ordered a stationary bike. It's going to take 3 weeks to get to my house. And because I feel the same way, like, okay, it's almost a year now. Enough is enough. I need to get a bike because my gym's not going to open. It's not opening. And so it's time. So we've been researching, but there's been a ton of people buying bikes. The
Yeah.
bike industry is just doing phenomenal.
Mhm.
So people are, they're getting out of some their comfort and maybe take a class. I mean, I just taught psychology for a semester and I never had better attendance for a college class. And I know it's because they were like, this is like my thing, right? I go to class, these are my peeps, and it's a fun topic. And literally, I had 30 students, and I've never had such good attendance. And I have a 3 hour class,
Wow.
but people are just like wanting to connect.
Mm-hmm.
So in some ways I've seen a lot of good, you know, happen. And again, I'm going to say if you're around those people that are really negative, you got to focus on yourself because they don't know and we won't help them if we're trying to fix them.
Right. Absolutely. That's a great point. Um, and then finally, the biggest question of the night.
Yeah.
Where can my viewers find you?
So I am at sheriannaboyle.com. That is where all my books are and my coaching services and my classes. And I'm starting a class this Sunday. And then I have another website called cleanselife.com, which is where all of I teach yoga and I record them and I make them available for people if they want to do yoga with me. And that can be fun too. It's on demand yoga. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. I'll put all the links down below.
Okay.
Once again, Sherianna, thank you so much for joining me. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you, Harry.
And to all my viewers, I will see you guys next time. Hey guys, thanks for watching another episode of my show. If you want more episodes of the H Panel, the button's going to be right here. If you want to subscribe for more videos from myself, it'll be right down below. Please like, comment, share, give 5 stars. Let's keep this conversation going, guys, all right? I'll see you next time. Thank you for your support.